Welcome to PTG TV. This is your host, Antonio Hicks. And on my next series episode, Westward Bound, a journey through the political, technological, and gaming landscape of the West Coast, I welcome on my special guest, Laura Morris. Laura is a freelance art director, a set designer for TV advertisements, branded content, and an occasional short film in the Albuquerque, New Mexico area. Laura was initially working in the film industry in San Francisco Bay for 7 years before she moved and relocated to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And in the coming year, Laura will be working on a new venture to provide custom props and set design and styling services for individuals working in videography, photography, and content creation industry. So thank you, Laura, for coming on. Thank you for accepting the invite.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
So how did you get into set design and styling? Because I always find it interesting when I see about people that work in like the movie industry. Because now that my wife has been working in it for a while, I didn't know all the things that it entailed. And like I got people around me now. Like I have a DP of photography who lives down the street from me as well too. And I'm like, I didn't realize there were so many things that people did on set.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The different departments are so, you're working in the same space, but they're so vastly different. My kind of journey to art department in film and TV started kind of back in illustration. So growing up as a kid, that's kind of a way I expressed myself was illustration and kind of crafts as well, but for the most part, illustration. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of when people ask you, what are you going to be when you grow up, right? So I got it stuck in my head that I was going to be a prolific cereal box designer. I thought that was it. That was going to be, and then I later learned that was graphic design, so I kind of figured, okay, well, illustration, graphic design, that kind of makes sense. Then I learned you could add motion to those images. And so I became interested in animation. And so I actually initially went to school in San Francisco for animation. Okay. So I did a semester in animation, just kind of learning. We did, stop motion animation, claymation, all those different things. And then while I was there, I was observing, we were kind of working relatively closely with the motion picture and television department. And while I was working on my stop motion in a dark room by myself, I would see all the film students collaborating. And it just seemed really exciting to be able to be creating images, as you said, with people with such different backgrounds and different skill sets. And creating something together. Not that you can't do that in animation, of course you can, but just at the time, it just seemed like something fun to transition into. So I switched majors. I had a chat with my counselors and was able to use my animation studies as part of my motion picture and television directing degree, and just moved in that direction. One of the ways to incorporate that kind of hands-on arts and crafts kind of thing into film was in the art department. So thinking about character development, thinking about, what a character's space might look like, what their habits might be, what they might carry around with them, and just kind of visualizing what that space may look like and being able to create props or, change the space and make it feel entirely different for the screen. And that was just a great way to combine all of those things I was passionate about into one space.
Now, how was it working as a graphic designer to get into like the film? Because my son, he goes to art school. So he's going to art school for graphic design. Okay. And he loves it, but they have him partner up sometimes with people that works in the film. And he was like, there's always some form of tension between the graphic designers and the people that work on like doing film and videography work, like people that work in the industry. So what was your experience with that?
Well, so when I was doing the illustration and graphic design stuff, that wasn't as much for the film industry, but you absolutely can do that in film. So there are a lot of needs, especially, within props department, where you have to make labels for different things, or to avoid showing branding, or you have to make signage for in the background. Now I imagine maybe some of that conflict could come from, or tension could come from, just the fact that in certain films, you have to have accuracy. So maybe someone who's kind of initiating that commission or that graphic design may need it to be specific to a time period or a color palette. And as someone who's as creative as a graphic designer, that could be potentially a little bit difficult to adapt to needing to fit within those parameters in the film industry. But it's that collaboration. It's those kind of different minds coming together that makes the film so rich, and gives the story so much depth, and makes it really enjoyable for the viewer as well.
I agree. Mm-hmm. So what has it been like working in the industry as a woman? Because it's generally, like, some of the people I know that working on set that does production and stuff, they're mostly men. So what has it been your experience working on set, especially doing like styling and designing as a woman?
Well, I'm actually very happy to say that even in the time that I've been in the industry, I've seen a massive shift in how women are treated and kind of welcomed into the space. Mm-hmm. That's definitely a little bit slower with anything that is, maybe a bit more hands-on, construction-based, stuff like that, just where it's maybe assumed that certain skill sets aren't, that you may not have certain skill sets.
Right.
But I've definitely seen a really positive difference. Kind of, there are some old cultural kind of norms within the film industry that are absolutely changing. And there are people pushing for that. There are women in the industry kind of showing that, what they can do. And there are people who are really embracing that. And so I'm fortunate to say that it has been a positive experience for me for the most part.
Yeah, it's a great thing to see, because even like some of the other things that I do outside of the show that you're on right now, is like I've seen more women get into like carpentry type skills that you generally don't, especially down here in Georgia, you don't generally see. It's mostly like a man type thing. But I love seeing, the diversity across the board. Even like in my current field, like working in IT, I love seeing all that, because it does help with like innovation and creativity and stuff when people of different groups just come together to work towards building out a vision for production.
Well, it's so important in film and other art forms, of course, but in film, representation is really important. I mean, I just feel like if a story is only told from one perspective, it's going to be much harder for the audience to relate. You're not going to have certain things in there that come from, that other background. And that's with diversity in all aspects, just representation of all different kinds of people, whether that's in the actual story itself or just kind of in how the backgrounds are built, how the characters are developed. I think that's really important. And also just representation in different careers, right? So, if you have children seeing themselves in a certain industry, they're much more likely to think that's a possibility. I mean, I feel like when kids are trying to decide what they want to do, they're not necessarily even going to consider something where they don't see themselves in that space. So just by actively doing things, pushing yourself to do something that is outside of what is expected, I think that in and of itself, just that action is very, very helpful.
I agree. Now, I hear a little accent in your voice. Where are you originally from?
Yeah, so I'm originally from the UK.
Okay.
My family is all in Wales. I grew up in England, moved to the US when I was 8, over to the East Coast, and I've kind of been moving across ever since. So I've been in quite a few different states.
So what brought you over here to the States?
That was originally my parents, my parents' jobs. Yeah. So I kind of had my childhood in the UK, and then definitely had a cultural shift kind of as I moved into the US. And then, I've been lucky enough to live in places where I've been able to work with people from all over the world, which has been really cool as well.
So what was your parents' like vision of what they thought you might be doing as you grew up?
Well, so my parents are both scientists.
Oh, wow.
Their background is science. So that was already a little bit different for them. They were the first to go to college in their family. And science was a little bit alien to their family, I think. So they understood that the idea of, kind of going to something a little bit different than what your family may be used to. But my dad is an artist. My mom's always been very creative as well. And really, they both really encouraged me as a kid to express myself with art.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think they would be necessarily surprised, but definitely a little bit, unsure, a little bit apprehensive about me, going into an art degree and art school, but always very, very, very supportive. And like I said, I don't think it really surprised them. So I think they were ready for it. But they've definitely been trying to find ways along the way to support me and to kind of offer advice when I'm doing something that is very different than what they know.
Yeah, that's good to hear because I feel the same way about like my two boys. So I'm an engineer. I've always been an engineer since I was like the age of 10. So I kind of had like you have something that you visualize what your kids were gonna do based upon what you're already doing. But even in my family, like I'm similar to your family, like my like on my dad's side of the family, like they're artists, musicians, heavy into art and music and stuff.
Yeah.
So I thought at least one of my boys would get into engineering and I had them go through programming stuff. I had them do like development. They build out computers. So at least they have the foundational knowledge, but both of them went into something completely different. And I didn't even get mad. I'm like, as long as you find something that you're passionate about and that you love, then I don't care what it is. As long as it can help pay the bills and you can take care of yourself. As long as you love doing it and you're not working a job just to work a job, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think that support's really important and just kind of allows people to go, like we said, go into careers that may be a little bit less conventional,
right.
And see what happens, right? I mean, you can always fall back on something else and restart, but I think it's worth giving it a shot and seeing where it goes.
So how did you start learning your first roles? Well, not for your first jobs itself to get onto movie sets? Because I can say a lot of jobs in IT is hard to get into. I can only imagine the same thing to get on like a film set. Like, how has it been for you getting work?
Yeah, so it's been very different in San Francisco versus Albuquerque, very different environments. So when I was in San Francisco, I was in film school or art school. And one of the best ways to get on other people's sets and be able to observe all the different roles was to be in art department. So I was actually studying, I took all the directing classes. So I really enjoyed directing, kind of being in control of the vision as a whole. But I also just really value the collaboration and really wanted to be able to be a little bit of a fly on the wall while also contributing to different people's projects. So in school, I would be the production designer and a set dresser in the art department, so that I could work closely with the director and work closely with other people on set and kind of just observe the different roles. I then took a little bit of a break and actually worked at Apple for a couple of years. So I worked in the big flagship Apple store in San Francisco.
Okay.
For 2 years, which was a really cool experience. So that allowed me to so many creative people working at Apple, whether it's because they're interested in the technology or because the technology allows them to create music, video, art, anything like that. And so there are a lot of really creative people, a lot of very inspired people, and we kind of got to bring that out in customers as well. So that was a really good experience, kind of getting to know everyone there. And they were also very supportive of the fact that I wanted to do as much as possible with the creative aspects of the job. So I got to do some event photography with Apple, and they did like photo walks around the town, and I got to take photos of that and be a part of some of the presentations with Today at Apple, which again is kind of working on showing people what they can do with an iPad or an Apple Pencil or the different software that's available, and really kind of inspiring people. And then
do any editing work too?
I'm sorry?
Do you do any editing work?
I've done a little bit of editing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I for my own projects, most of the time if I'm directing, I like to edit as well. So it's very, very valuable to learn some skills there as well. And then from Apple, I actually kind of overlapped a little bit because I had a friend reach out to me and say, keep an eye on your phone. You're expecting a call.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got a call to be a part of the team on Matrix Resurrections in my time at Apple. So I had to, explain that to my managers and try to take some days off and see if I could do both for a minute, because it was almost a trial period at the production, because they hadn't been greenlit yet. So we didn't have the go ahead to actually make the film.
Now, I hate to cut you off. What was your manager's response when you told him that?
To be honest, it was quite funny, because they could tell I was extremely excited and really wanted to jump into that, and they were extremely supportive. But I also was limited on what I could tell them. I couldn't tell them what film it was.
Oh, you couldn't tell them the film? Okay.
I couldn't tell them the film. And actually, funny enough, even though I was able to guess based on what was around the office, they didn't officially tell me the film either. I just knew it was big. And they're extremely supportive. I just was very honest with them. I said, this is what I am going to school for, and I absolutely will, consider coming back to Apple in the future. This is kind of a relatively short-term thing. And they're extremely supportive. And funny enough, it was almost exactly my 2-year anniversary at Apple. So it was kind of a nice time to part ways. And they always do an amazing send off for anybody leaving the store. They all line up down all the steps in the Apple store and clap, and it's a huge deal. It's really, really nice. Yeah, and as you can imagine, I was definitely crying. So amazing to feel that from a workplace. So that made me feel very positive about the decision to jump onto the feature. Obviously, it was something that I really wanted to do anyway, and I had full support of everyone. So that was really nice.
So how was it, your experience going from like Apple to working on something as big as being on the set of Matrix?
Oh, it was wild. It was wild. I actually got quite a unique experience on Matrix, because I was hired as an art department assistant. So similar to a PA, a production assistant, kind of just doing whatever is needed for the department, but within the art department. So that involves just working a bit more closely with the production designers, the art directors, concept artists. But the really, really cool thing was, because the film wasn't greenlit yet, it was pre-production, they call it. So basically, I was in this small office with all the department heads, so the production designers, the director, all the concept artists. Some of the cast were coming through and, would join us for lunch. And so that I got to be just with those people, which typically would not happen for someone who's just assisting. And I got to be there for the moment the film got the green light and we were ready to go full steam ahead, which of course then, the office had to grow, more people had to come in. It was full steam ahead. Just, I had to help them, keep everything organized, and, since we were moving at such a rapid pace. But I will forever be grateful for that initial experience of just being able to get so close to some of those people that I really admire, how they work. Spent a lot of time with the art department coordinator, which again, on something that massive was really, really cool experience just to see what she was doing. So
really how long did it take you all to for them to film the movie, but for you to be working on set as well too?
So I actually was the art department assistant and I was working with a couple of other assistants a little bit later on, but I was pre-production through initial principal photography. So I was actually in the art department office. So I did get to go on set a couple of times. I got to source certain things that were needed for set. And it was happening all around us. We were filming in downtown San Francisco, and we were all in a hotel in downtown San Francisco. But I would be at the office. So I got to see, all the designs for the sets and kind of everything that was happening within the busy office that was kind of just popped up out of nowhere. We had to build the office from scratch, basically, within this hotel. So you're like
behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes, yeah, just
Okay.
basically getting everything ready for the next day, so that they could just go out on set and everything was ready to go, or potentially, getting stuff ready for a set that was going to be filmed the next week. Um, but yeah, so in the very beginning, it was a lot of concept art, a lot of arranging the concept art as the script was still evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So we would, as changes were made, the concept artist would bring me new work, and we would pull down what we called the scene wall, would pull down some images of, what was happening in a certain scene and replace it with the new images. And then we would have to organize I would do a lot of like file organization, and stuff like that. And then I also got to be in charge. I got to be the favorite person because I was in charge of all the catering. So people would come put in their
Food is very important.
it's very important, and it makes you friends very quickly. Yes. Or not, depending on what you order, I suppose. But so I got to do fun stuff like that, get everyone good food, decorate the office for the holidays, that kind of office stuff, while also just making sure everything was kind of running smoothly.
So all of your skills between the set designer and stylist and stuff, how do those two roles, will your roles like interweave together when you're doing any kind of work?
How the different background skills. Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, because like you were saying, you're a set designer, but you're also like a stylist too, and you do custom props and stuff. So
oh yeah.
Between all of those things, like how do you integrate those all together?
Well, so typically now what I'll do, so now that I basically finished up with Matrix, moved to New Mexico during the pandemic, and since I've been in New Mexico, I've been doing a lot of commercial work. On a commercial, typically, I end up being kind of a one-man band or one-woman band, as kind of the art department. So it'll often get the title of art director, but it's typically kind of the art department for the commercial or for the branded content. So usually what that entails is kind of a variety of different skills that would be separate positions on a feature. Mm-hmm. So maybe I need to go out shopping and sourcing props, or so there's overlap with props and set design within the commercial world. Anything that's needed for the background, following a color scheme that's often given to us by the client or the agency. And then once I'm actually on set, I'm going to be dressing the sets. I'll be making sure there's no logos if we're working in a real environment. Maybe we're going into a store, we're going into a space that there's just logos everywhere. That's something that has to be taken care of. So we call it Greeking the logos. Basically, you just have to make it so that it's not legible or recognizable. And then it can also cross over sometimes, and I try not to move too much into the hair and makeup department, or wardrobe. Sometimes you end up doing a little bit of stuff with that just because you're the one with the similar tools that would be needed for that. Okay. But I try to stay within kind of the props and set dressing. So you end up getting to do a lot of different things depending on what stage of the production you're in, whether it's the initial coming up with the initial design with the director and the other creatives on the team, or it's actually on set, kind of running around on your feet most of the day, putting up a set and then making sure you take it down. And I'm really, I always like to make sure the set the space that we're in is left potentially better than when we arrived. I like, especially if we're using someone's home, or I just think it gives the industry, it helps the industry's reputation if everyone's very respectful and make sure that's all reset properly. So I was telling people to make sure they're putting, the right kind of tape on the wall and not pulling paint off and
yes.
all that kind of stuff. So I have eyes everywhere when I'm on a set, just trying to make sure that, doing a little bit of damage control.
Yeah, because you do not want to come to it afterwards either.
No, absolutely not. And a lot of times it doesn't. And it just ends up getting left for whoever the owner of the property is. So, I try to work with locations and just keep them happy if they're letting us use their space.
So I didn't ask this before. So what you working on the Matrix, and I guess some of the things that you're doing right now. So the person that they referred you, so they knew somebody that was on that set itself, and it was like they know somebody that has a background in this kind of work that we think you should bring on the team. So is that how that happened?
So yeah, absolutely. So it was someone that I knew well. I think they were on a different project and they got asked to be on it. And then it's very, very common that that's how you end up on a project, especially if you're in a new space. Is, you know, if you have to decline a job, you'll try to give a couple of different options to that person. That way, that it keeps your relationship going with that client that could be a potential client in the future. But it also helps out, if you've worked with someone that you really enjoyed how they work, you can recommend them. And that's a good way to make new contacts within the industry. And that's the way I've got on a lot of different jobs that I otherwise wouldn't have necessarily known about. Is maybe the producer had a recommendation. They call, they say, hey, so-and-so, give me your name. Is this something you'd be interested in doing? A lot of times too, when you're starting out, that person that refers you will tell the producer, disclaimer, this person is brand new, like they have great work ethic, they're still learning. If you're trying to find someone, if you're still trying to find someone in a pinch, I'm sure they would absolutely love to be part of your set. And there are a lot of people who are very open to that. They know that you may need to work with someone, who has a bit more knowledge, or, they may need to be a bit more patient with you. But they'll try to give you that shot, that foot in the door. And then that's very, very helpful, because then you have something, on your resume or in your experience, your past experience that shows that you were able to, step up to that challenge and do well.
So it's all about building relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Now, for somebody I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
That's okay. You're all good.
So for somebody that doesn't have those relationships yet, like, how do they cultivate that? Like, what would be your recommendation for even getting in front of somebody to, like, even build that type of bond?
A lot of people, so there's a couple of different routes. Some people, especially if you're going into something like maybe lighting or electrical, gripping, kind of rigging, anything like that. There are a lot of rental houses that rent out equipment. So, and if you're not going to a film school where you kind of make those connections, a lot of people will start that way, just getting themselves around the equipment and learning the different terminology, because it's kind of wild. It's its own vocabulary. So they'll kind of do that. They'll work there, volunteer there, and then they get to know certain people and say, hey, if you ever need someone, I'm available. In the art department, it's a little bit different. Most people that I've spoken to have come into it from different angles. Film school, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely not for everybody, and it's not imperative that someone goes to film school. That's definitely how I initially kind of made my network of friends. They see you working on projects that are, maybe it's a student film, a senior project, something like that. And they then know what your work ethic looks like. They know what you can do. And then they'll potentially recommend you once they're out in the industry working. It's all about just honestly, everyone, because so many people in the industry are there because someone took a chance on them, they're very willing to do the same for other people. And so I think just telling people that's what you want to do, you never know. You say, hey, I really want to do this. You go, I mean, for example, right? You said, oh, my wife's in film industry. Boom. If you tell someone that that's what you're interested in doing, they may know somebody that they can put you in touch with, and that just kind of gets the ball rolling. There's a lot of different ways to learn just online too, just watching videos of people. A lot of people are very willing to share techniques on how they have done certain things. And then another avenue that's not necessarily how I did it, but is just get, your phone, literally any camera, and just start making small movies, right? And that's something that's advice I hear a lot, especially if someone wants to go into directing or producing, is just start doing it and don't worry about the quality of it, because you're still getting that experience of having to, have creatively problem solve and find locations and work with actors and you're getting a lot more experience than you would necessarily realize, even just from trying to put together something with a group of friends on a tiny budget. Some of the best experiences I've had have been working on tiny budgets, because it just teaches you to be very, very resourceful and to know where to find things. And then, you start working on a commercial, they give you a budget and you say, hey, I did it for half, of course they're going to love you. Right.
Right.
So, all those things, that kind of like diamonds under pressure thing is, I think, very, very true. You just got to kind of jump in. And then people, submit to festivals. If you're making short films, I'm part of a little film collective here called Dust Wave, and that's a perfect example. So we all support each other, making little films, trying to get them into festivals, trying to get grants. And sometimes they kind of take off, and you have people coming into town from different places, and they get to see the film, and they get to. Maybe you're on a panel, you get to talk about your experience, and, it can kind of roll like that as well.
Have you ever had anything go to Sundance?
I haven't personally had anything go, but lots of friends.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully one day.
Yeah. Sundance. Have you been to Sundance before? Have you?
I haven't been. No.
Oh my God.
I
know. I encourage you to go. I mean, it's fun to a degree. It's very cold.
Yes.
It is very cold. It's in the mountains of what is it, Utah? So it is very, 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 very cold.
Yeah.
So with and I tell people like working on sets, I tell people to use the technology they have, because I mean even doing podcasts and like my other stuff I do, I help people out with content creation and doing videography work for them too. And people see my cameras and they say the same thing, how can I get into it but I don't have all this money. I was like, use your phone. I'm like, your phone it's a high-end camera. It costs over $1,000 anyway. So I'm like, you can use it to record any content, because and we found it out with, I don't know how old you are. I mean, I'm an old guy. With the new found footage stuff, well, not new, but with like the Blair Witch Project. I don't know if you ever seen that movie. And so with the Blair Witch Project, it shows you that you can use a basic video camera as long as the story is told in a very good and unique way. A lot of people can get past it not being shot in 4K or 8K. As long as it's good. And then Apple even more recently showed people that with their whole, their keynote speech they had during Halloween, they filmed the entire thing using an iPhone 15. And you wouldn't have known that unless you saw the last part of it. At the bottom of the page, it shows you, they said we filmed this entire thing on an iPhone 15.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just using the tools you have. And it's funny to hear myself saying this, because it just sounded so cliche when people would say it to me when I was starting out, just grab an old video camera, just grab a phone. I mean, to be honest, even you go a little bit more analog these days and people love it because it has a different look that it's retro. It's retro. Absolutely. Take advantage of that. Why not? And that's something that is a little bit hard to grasp when you're starting out, because you kind of just think people are saying it like, but you have a fancy camera, Right. So it's, again, to see people actually do it and say, look, this was filmed on an iPhone. Bet you didn't realize that. It's huge. I mean, that's huge. Like when I was in the Apple store, people would come in and they would use the demo computers to, quickly edit something, or it's like you go to the library, use your resources. Don't tell Apple I said to go use their computers, but I mean, you have to think outside the box and think of the resources you have. And like you said, if the story is good, I mean, if you think about watching a play, like at first you realize it's a play. As soon as you get sucked into the story, you don't realize it's a play anymore. You're in it. You are.
That's the thing. I care more about the story than anything. I mean, sure, backgrounds and sound effects and everything play a part in it, but as long as the story is told in a great way, that's what I'm being captivated by. Because even now, like I'm listening to the new form like podcast, and the movie sold a podcast like it was like the old, what was it, War of the Worlds. Through radio. And to me, that's great. I mean, there's no film in it, you're not seeing anything, you're just listening. And then you let in your mind, you're imagining things yourself.
Fill in the gaps. Yeah.
And the same thing can be done with people that wants to, get into the industry. They can tell a story. It doesn't have to be, with the greatest of the greatest equipment. They can use what they have right now.
I think the other thing that is really important for people to know is it's easy to think that no one's going to relate to your content or that your story isn't interesting, right? But if you find it interesting, 100% guarantee that someone else is going to find it interesting, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like that's such a huge lesson that I've learned is, you know, even though you think, oh, no one cares about that. No one, it's like, there's someone that will relate because, I mean, yeah, of course, everyone's one of a kind, but also there's so many shared experiences and someone's going to relate to you. Someone will see themselves in your content, whether it's, you know, a TikTok video or if it's a film, you know, if it's something that you, and especially you and a group of friends, like, of course, there's people out there who are going to love it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put it out, see where it goes.
Now, with the stuff that you create, do you have like your own signature style or approach on how you do like set designs?
My absolute favorite for set design is stuff that's very highly stylized. So think like commercials with just very like fun props and scenery, or music videos that are very creative, using different materials and playing with light, playing with color, all that kind of stuff. That's just very, very stylized. But so I guess I lean more in that direction. That being said, though, I do really, really love the opportunity to occasionally jump into something that feels very real. You know, it's kind of grounded in reality, and you really do have to think about, okay, this character comes across as a real person with depth and with their own background and life story, and you know, think like them. What would their environment look like? And so that's always a really fun challenge as well.
So what do you kind of draw your inspirations from?
I have to say music videos. Just, okay. I can watch them for hours.
Like what kind of music videos?
What kind of music videos? It's a good question. I like a little bit of everything, to be honest, which I know is kind of a vague answer, but I love that you are not necessarily restrained by reality. It's inspired by another piece of art, right? So the video itself is going to be inspired by the music, which again, I spoke about this before, it kind of adds richness. I think the more layers you have to something, it just becomes its own beast. It gets so rich, whether that's other people contributing creative ideas, or just the fact that, you know, maybe a music video is inspired by a painting, or, you know, something like that. Or, you know, in films as well, they say, you know, every frame is a picture, right? Like it's often based on classic art. So yeah, I just think that's what the appeal is for music videos to me, is just that you're thrown into this world for really just a few minutes. You're not necessarily trying to follow any kind of literal story structure. Sometimes you are, sometimes you're not. And there's just so many just fun ways to play with visuals. And a lot of times the band will also get creative and throw ideas in there about things that mean a lot to them, or, you know, the meaning of the song itself. So yeah, it just kind of just rolls into this thing that just becomes its own piece of art, which I really like.
So have you done any music videos yourself?
I've been in the art department, some music videos. So the best ones I was on were for No Vacation.
Okay.
So those are really fun. I got to make like a big crystal chandelier type thing that the band was able to stand inside. We had another set that used over 1,000 yellow balloons.
Oh wow!
Which was really, really cool. It was equally fun popping all the balloons at the end. So stuff like that, where you just get to, I mean, it's just really kind of hands-on, and it's just super creative. Those absolutely were my favorite. And then I did some as like directing projects for myself as well when I was in school. So it's definitely my favorite thing to work on. Commercials, also very fun. You often get to be quite playful with the design elements as well.
Have you ever like taken any of your stuff and like copied in onto the next project? Because I find myself like when I'm doing anything, it's always something original. Even when I'm doing like my own podcast or shows with somebody else, like when I'm doing effects or I'm adding music to it, I have to go by the flow of it, and I find music that matches that.
Yeah, I would say I do pull some less so inspiration from past projects and more so just experience. So things that made, if something drastically slowed down the production, make sure that that's ready next time so it's efficient. Or, if something was difficult to find, make sure there's plenty of time to source that ahead of time. So less so about creative inspiration and more about just making sure everything runs smoothly for everyone else, but also for myself, because the less stress I have on set, the more creative I can be. So I've kind of just taken that along with me. And but in terms of creative inspiration, I often you don't know what it's going to be until you have a meeting with the department heads and kind of discuss, oh, we could try this, or what if we represented this by, with this visual, or and then it develops and you just have these great conversations where everyone's bouncing ideas off each other. And that's my favorite part, I would say, actually, just that incubation, just that initial think tank kind of throwing ideas around. And then, get to see it come to life, which is also very, very surreal. Something that, you've just seen on paper, and then all of a sudden you're seeing it in real life. You're walking around in a 3D set. That's just amazing. And seeing, sometimes whether it's the band or the cast walking around in the space going, wow, this looks amazing. That feeling is amazing too, because you've created that environment that's hopefully helping them with their performance. It's immersive for them too, which is always really rewarding.
Yeah, I mean, especially in music videos, because it kind of plays and tells a story of what the artist is trying to come across. So it's almost telling two different designs. You have the person that helped design the set and the look and feel of the video, and then you have the musicians behind it too. So all those things have to combine together to make the vision for what you're trying to display. So yeah. I'm with you on that. Only music I don't like is country music. That's why. Is it something about country music I just don't like? But anything else, I love it. Especially when you're mixing up two different genres together, with classical and metal and stuff. Oh, I love that. I love to hear stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you also have to consider, a lot of times the band wants to be perceived in a certain way, and specific band members within the band want to be perceived a certain way, because it's their personal brand at the end of the day. And so you have to consider that as well, and kind of how you're making them look, what the background looks like. So that's always adds kind of an interesting element too.
So are you still working on trying to get on major production sets, or are you focusing now towards your entrepreneurship and doing your thing?
So the latter of the two, definitely kind of trying to work on getting a little business up and running. I've been working freelance, which is great because you get to be in all kinds of different stuff. It's constantly changing. That's something that I always seek out. I have a hard time when every day looks the same. And so that's great for me. You get to travel a little bit. You get to just start fresh with each project. So that's been really nice. And I definitely, in the new year, I'm going to be looking into kind of getting a bit more of a focus on a business that is, custom props and set design and stuff like that. So we'll see kind of where that goes. Right now, we're just doing research and kind of seeing where the need is here in Albuquerque. You do have big productions filming here. You also have, local photographers. Or you have, there's lots of small businesses opening up that need content. So yeah, just kind of we're in the research phase at the moment, trying to figure out what's needed and what kind of niche we fit into. So.
Now you're saying is it you and the team, or are you working by yourself?
It's me so I work as, like I said, a freelancer. It's kind of my business at the moment. It's with a good friend that I've been working on with some recent productions with. So yeah, it's a little bit top secret at the moment. As I said, we're in the research phase, but hopefully some good stuff coming next year. Or in this next year.
Now, what kind of advice would you give to somebody aspiring to work in this industry?
Well, it depends which department, but I would
doing what you're doing.
I would absolutely say try a little bit of everything first. Even if you're really, really sure you want to do one department, you want to do one thing, even if you're really, really sure you just want to direct, just try a little bit of everything. One, you may find that you like something else.
Right.
Two, it gives you respect from other people, other departments, because you've been in their shoes and you understand what they're doing. And it just really helps you communicate. So if you are directing, or if you are trying to communicate your vision, or if you're trying to communicate something to other departments, you speak their language a little bit. It's a little bit of give and take. I think that's huge. Just making sure you're open-minded in the beginning. It's very easy, and I speak from my own experience, very easy to be stubborn and say, no, I do this. And I held myself back from doing stuff in the art department because I was like, it's pulling me away from being a director, right? But if you lean into where you seem to be pulled and find out, what have you got to lose? You might go, oh no, this is the wrong direction, gonna switch it back. But I don't think there's ever anything to lose by just kind of leaning into it for a little bit. I would also just say something that I did that was really, really helpful in the beginning was, especially with social media and stuff like that, just research who's out there doing what you want to be doing. What did they do? Follow them on Instagram. Follow along on their website if they have new projects coming out. Reach out to them for advice. Reach out to them to show them your projects. I did that in the beginning with a couple of people that I thought would never in a million years respond to me. I got really, really lovely responses from some people just saying,
"Oh, wow, okay,
really great work. Keep it up. This really helped me in the beginning." And they gave me advice, whether it's through an Instagram message, or if you can find their email. A lot of times people have a contact page on their site that just goes, you don't get to see what their email is, but it goes through to a personal email a lot of times. I think that's huge too. If you have a specific question, if you want to know typically people will ask you, what camera do you use? What equipment do you use?
Yeah.
I think that's good. But it's also, as you said, it's not necessarily the tool that is the key to the success, right? So asking people, how did you start out? What got you into this? What do you recommend I do? And just kind of collecting information, I think is huge.
Now, saying that, well, what were some of the challenges that you faced, or people can expect to face too?
Some challenges, definitely getting people to take a chance on you if it's just kind of a cold call kind of interaction. You have to try to self-promote. It's very difficult, especially in the beginning when you may not necessarily believe it yourself. You have to self-promote. You have to talk yourself up. You have to say, look what I've done. Like, I would love the opportunity to try that. So it sounds kind of funny, but flattery goes a long way. If you really do love someone's work, tell them you love their work and you'd love to work with them. It would be an honor to work with you, to collaborate. People love that. So I think just not being afraid to, don't hold yourself back, basically. That was definitely a challenge for me in the beginning. Just promoting yourself when you feel like you're kind of on the bottom rung of the ladder and you're not feeling super confident about what you've made. Another thing another thing that's helped me with that is look back on what you have done, because a lot of times it's easy to think like, oh, I'm not a professional. If you look back at what projects you have done, it's a really good confidence boost, because you look back and actually I started here and now I'm here, and that's only within a year or two. So yeah, I would absolutely say just the confidence element is something that I have struggled with. What else? I'm trying to think. Definitely, and it kind of comes back to the same thing, putting limitations on yourself. Just get started. Just start somewhere. It's easy to sit around and think about where you should start or how you should start, and kind of get stuck in a little bit of a loop thinking about why you can't.
Right.
Whereas if you just start, then you're going to learn, you're going to find out what you need or what you didn't need that you thought you did. Yeah, it's just kind of jumping in, I think is really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to start from somewhere because I mean, that's one thing I always say. You don't want to have any regrets when you're getting older. So it's
right.
the biggest regrets you can have is that you never started and you tried it out and you failed in it. Because I mean, you're going to fail at something. So at least try it because that's how you really define what you like and what you love. You try it, and if you like it, you continue on with it.
And kind of in that same vein, and I don't know if this necessarily applies to everyone, but I'm someone that needs to start. I just need to act before talking about it sometimes, because sometimes you tell other people about your idea and either one, they get excited and start contributing to your idea and it starts changing before you've even had a chance to put it down on paper, which can be a good thing, but it can also kind of take you off track. Or two, they doubt the idea, they question the idea, and then that stops you from, it takes away that confidence that you had in the idea. And so sometimes just starting without just necessarily discussing with other people, even if it's people that you very much value their opinion, sometimes that can still happen, where all of a sudden you're questioning yourself instead of just going for it. So that's something that I've had to learn, because you kind of look to other people for reassurance that it's a good idea, and I think that's the worst thing you could do sometimes. You just got to go, well, I thought it was a good idea initially, so there has to be something there, right?
Right.
There's got to be something there, and just explore it before you kind of, let whether it's the voices in your head in, or the other people around you sometimes.
So now, where everybody is worried about AI stuff, what do you think the future holds for like set designs and styling? You see any of that playing a part in what you do?
So I think right now it's extremely beneficial. Potentially controversial opinion, but right now I think it's a really, really good tool for gathering inspiration. The ability to just put in a couple of ideas that you have and mash them together and see them in an image and then pull from that image is a very, very good tool.
But I like how you were saying it. I'm going to cut you off, but I just want to highlight what you're saying. It's a good tool. Because a lot of people don't even see this. They're seeing it as, okay, well, you're stealing somebody else's stuff or you're like cheating in the system. So I love the fact that you're saying it's a tool. And I'll go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So from a practical standpoint, I absolutely feel that way. From a more emotional standpoint, if I see a really cool photograph that I love, and I'm like, wow, look at that amazing set design, and then I find out that it is an AI generated image, that hurts a little bit. It stings. It stings a little bit, because it's something that someone could have created in reality, but it's just the digital, it's just the end point, it's just the digital image, and there wasn't necessarily that kind of human element all the way through. I don't know if that will change. I'm open to my perception changing of that, because I think it's easy to be attached to the process, right? But then when you actually think about what's possible, and the fact that certain things could be created so much faster, it could help us imagine things that we wouldn't have otherwise thought of. Again, I think it should be used as a tool. I think it should be used to enhance what we're already doing. And if it's used that way, I think it's excellent. It does make me a little sad that, it probably will take over some jobs. But then, just as we were saying, how, a great HD video looks fantastic, but also there's something that gives people the warm fuzzies about the nostalgic video camera footage, right? And I think that will always be there, where people can feel the human element in something that's a bit more analog. And so I think even if it goes a little, pendulum swings a little far in one direction, I think it comes back. And so we'll have to see what happens.
So now you're speaking of the analog thing, is there any like favorite resources that you pull like any of your stuff from that helps you design like your sets, or, help you in creating them?
I'm a big fan of, so I absolutely love the fact that visual effects can enhance film. But I am a huge fan of doing things in person on set. So meaning basically, if there's an opportunity to do something that's a special effect or a prop or something that could be done in post production, I much prefer to do it on the set. So I guess that is kind of influences how I do certain things, because there are things that would take a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra work. But I prefer to do it in person, analog, than in post.
Now, but what about like books and stuff? Like, you know, any books or websites you go to like pull any information from?
That's a good question.
I mean, because like I said, we were talking about AI, because AI can tell you, you know, anything and everything. But from an analog perspective, like, where do you go to like find something that you will help to create your vision?
So definitely, I'm a big fan of just sitting on the floor and having inspiration kind of around me. So whether it's a book, an interior design book from the 50s,
okay,
or graphic design from a certain era, typography, that kind of thing. I like having stuff, like I said, analog on paper. I definitely collect things like that just catch my eye. And a lot of times it's vintage stuff, because that's one of the best ways to kind of, especially if you're doing a period piece and you do have to dive back in time, or if you want to do something that feels fresh because it hasn't been seen for a while, it's a really good way to do that. And then the other thing that I really like to pull from is like folk tales and mythology and stuff like that. And that's within my art as well as within design. I think that helps you add meaning to things sometimes when you and it's not necessarily that meaning, that complexity is going to come across in the final visual to the viewer, but it gives you something to base your visual on, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it definitely does. Yeah.
Like the kind of the symbolism.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, I want to thank you again for coming on to the show. And I do ask my guests, like, you give like a final thought and like a word of encouragement you can give to people that's aspiring to get into what you're doing, and that could help them like get that motivation they need to try something different out.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so this one comes from a conversation I was just having with a friend.
Okay.
If you do anything creative, you are a creative. Literally, like anything. And it can be cooking. It can be, web design. It could be gardening, can be creative. If you have that creative streak in you, I think it's so easy for people to get imposter syndrome and think, oh, well, they have a creative background.
Right.
And like I said, I was just talking about this with a friend, and then we thought about all the things that they do that are creative. And they kind of had an aha moment. Yeah, I guess you're right. If you do anything creative and then there's a new creative endeavor you want to tackle, you want to pursue, you just got to remember that, like you already have that way of thinking, and that's huge. That's something that not everyone has. And so just go for it. Go all out, because and you may decide, I mean, this is something that happened for me for a little while. You may decide that's not something that you want to do in your work. Maybe you want to keep the creativity outside of work and you want to work and be a creative. That's okay too. You can do both. There's no reason you don't have to not go for it just because you don't know how to monetize it.
Right. Yeah. And I'm agree with you. I mean, all of us are like multifaceted people. And it's like, just because you're not making any money off of it, I mean, just like I said before, like find something that you just love to do, and that can, because I think it helps also with your mental health as well too. Because I'm like, we all in this rat race to where we work our jobs and I pay our bills, but like, what do you use to detox yourself with in the evening time? And I think as you do that, you're going to explore it, and then you're going to try to make yourself better. And it goes back to what you just said. It makes you a creative on top of it too, because you're learning how to perfect the craft that you want to be passionate about and in doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing that I've kind of learned along the way too is you can try to predict what other people are going to want in terms of, your creative pursuits, but you're much better off just making something that you feel passionate about. And then those people that, people like to think about themselves, right? If they like the idea of associating with you, they like the idea of working with you, if they like the idea that your art is in their house, if they like the idea that you're going to add something to their creation, that's when they're going to want to work with you. And so, if you're passionate about what you're doing, even if you're not necessarily pushing it out into the world that much, it just takes someone who goes, I really like what you're doing. I want to incorporate that in my life. Then you're set.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell people where they can find you and then find some of your work. And then maybe if they want to contribute towards you, where they can do that at.
Yeah. So my most recent work can be found at my website. So it's www.laurasianmorris.com. So it's LauraSian Morris, MORRIS.com. There you can see kind of just little screen grabs and some of the videos that I've worked on and what I did on that set. Can reach out there as well with questions. If anyone has questions for me on how I got to work on certain things or what the experience was like, reach out. I'm open to kind of chatting with people. And then keep an eye out in the new year, I guess, for new stuff. But
that you're not revealing just yet. Well, I want to thank you again.
You got to do it first.
Right. I want to thank you again for coming on and accepting the invite. And then, because this West Coast Bound tour has been very good. Because I've been talking to a lot of people in the film industry, and it's kind of big nowadays. And I think in doing that, it kind of helps people to pull out their creative side and tell the stories that they want to tell. And it also lets people get to see a side of them that, somebody else might have been quiet on. So thank you again for coming onto the show and accepting the interview. Really great conversation. I look forward to all the work that you have coming out and excited about your business. So we got to follow back up with you, when you get your stuff really going next year. Thank you all for tuning in again. It's Antonio Hicks, BTG TV, out.